Thank you for being here. This talk is diversity of leadership opportunities for the emergency medicine physician. And this is sponsored by the SAM Faculty Development Committee. In terms of disclosures, nobody has any disclosures. And the panelists are sitting here. So I'm Nancy Kwan, the panelist and moderator. I'm the vice chair of emergency medicine at Long Island Jewish Medical Center, Northwell Health. And I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. I am Nicole Franks. I am the Chief Quality Officer at Emory University Hospital Midtown in Atlanta, Georgia. I am also a professor of emergency medicine in the School of Medicine.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Annabelle Salvador. I'm the Deputy Chief Medical Officer for Northwell Health. It's New York's largest healthcare system. Also the Senior Vice President of Medical Staff Affairs and also an Associate Professor at the Zucker School of Medicine. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today.
Good afternoon. Oh, I'm not on, I guess I'm on
Sorry.
That's all right, on page 2.
There you go.
I am on page 2. So I'm Tony Sapal. I'm the chair of emergency medicine at the University of Arkansas in Little Rock. And as of last week, I'm now the vice dean of clinical affairs. Before that, I was the chief clinical officer at UAMS for 3 years, started just before the pandemic, and which they didn't warn me about. But so I've kind of have a couple of different leadership roles in the organization.
So I'm Judd Hollander. My titles are not as impressive as Tony's, but I am on the first page.
Sorry.
But I am the Senior Vice President for Healthcare Delivery Innovation at Thomas Jefferson. Nobody knows what that means, so it means I do anything I want to do. It actually is a cool title because it does give me great leeway to play with things that are important strategically to the enterprise, but with a little bit of an amorphous definition. And I also have an Associate Dean title and Professor of Emergency Medicine.
So I'm going to start off the panel with a question, but one of the things we do want to say is that we want to make this interactive. We want to, this is a panel discussion. We don't want to talk at you. We want you to be part of the conversation. So please ask questions. So I'll ask the first question. My first question is, you gave us your backgrounds, and all of you have very diverse titles and roles, as well as probably pathways. Can you tell us a little bit about your pathway and how you got there and the different roles you had and what you learned from each of those roles?
I guess I have the microphone and I'm sitting on the end, so I'll go first. I spent most of my career as a clinical researcher and, thought I would grow up to be an academic chair, and in honesty, I applied for a position or two and didn't get it. At the time, I was trying to figure out what I really wanted to do when I grew up. And at a time, the chair positions were becoming, a little more management and a little less independence. And so I decided, okay, the skill set you use as a clinical researcher is, being reasonably smart, insightful, and being able to analyze data. It's not really that different than finances or business plans or anything else. So I went back to Wharton not to get an MBA, but rather than getting letters, I thought it was important to get skills, which is, I think, an important point. And I supplemented where I didn't have skills with taking courses to enhance those deficits, and did that. And then, kind of got lucky in that after 17 or 18 years at Penn, Jefferson was taking a new direction in Philly. And although I begun my negotiations with, my chair, Ted Christopher, and the dean, it evolved to negotiations with the CEO. And, interestingly, because I had tried 2 startups that failed, the CEO was willing to take a chance on me rolling the dice to do innovative programs. And so my wife still doesn't believe the 6-figure income we wasted on those startups had an ROI. I actually am really firmly convinced it's the only reason I got the job I got. And for my first 2 years, I reported directly to a CEO of a health system that grew from 1.9 billion to 10 billion, and from 3 hospitals to 18 hospitals. And I was, got a cool title and was able to grow new programs that were important to him with the world's longest leash. And so it was a nice niche to develop and take and go. So that's kind of my pathway.
I got to follow that, Judd? That's why I'm on page 2. I'm just a humble dude from Miami, Florida. with Trinidadian roots. But I think luck is a great word. I think you might find that as a common theme, and I think we'll also talk about advanced degrees a little bit also. But what I tell my kids is that you create your luck, and I firmly believe that. So I was faculty at Indiana University for 13 years after graduating residency, and I got the itch to become a leader, and I was like, I think I want to be a chair. Never thought I would end up at Arkansas. I had never been to Arkansas, and quite frankly, didn't even know they had an academic program in Arkansas. So I took a huge leap of faith, and it was the best professional decision I made, at least so far. As I've grown with that organization, the organization morphed into a kind of a unique model of care delivery where the structure was a service line model for every clinical enterprise within the organization. And thankfully, emergency medicine became its own service line. So I within a couple of years, was not only chair of the department, but also the inaugural service line director for the emergency medicine service line. I reported to the chief clinical officer in that role, and then of course to the dean of the College of Medicine. And so as time went on, that chief clinical officer became the CEO. He asked me to assume the role of chief clinical officer, largely because of my interest in operations, and like Judd, took a lot of chances, failed, but I think I succeeded more than I failed in that, in the enterprise of emergency medicine for the organization. So I've been the CCO for 3 years, which really provided me a lot of perspective. In comes a new dean, and the CEO is retiring, and the dean recognizes that the College of Medicine's really been left behind for a number of years in this new model, because all of the clinical revenue stays with the service lines, not the academic departments. And so she really wanted someone that could help bridge that gap. And with my experience, both in the college as a chair, service line director, and CCO, I was the natural choice for her to assume this role in the dean's office. So never in a million years did I think I would be in the C-suite or in the dean's office, but it's worked, and it's been an incredible opportunity. And in terms of advanced degrees, I have none except for the MD, but I will be starting a master's program this August, mostly because, aside from my pragmatic experience, I think it's time to really get some nuts and bolts, get the academic portion of that, since we are academic physicians, and then bring that knowledge back to the organization as we grow. So I'm really fascinated to hear how you guys have grown from 1 point something billion to 10 billion. We're a $1.6 billion enterprise. We're trying to get to 4, and it ain't easy. And so if you are in a large organization, just appreciating and understanding that process is tremendously valuable.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, so my path was a little bit different, but my first job was at North Shore University Hospital, which was at that time sort of like we didn't have a health system. It was really just an individual hospital. And I loved the culture there. I loved everything about it. And I wanted to really go into residency program director. So I started doing things in my first couple of years with the residents. But then I got tapped on the shoulder to do quality. And I really loved quality. So I spent about 14 years being the director of quality for the department. And so I thought my path was going to be, it's going to be quality, and then I'll be associate chair, vice chair, chair, et cetera. And then I ended up moving to one of our sister hospitals at the time, because at that point we started to take up and merge with other hospitals and really starting to create a system. So they had asked me to go to our sister hospital we were sort of changing the leadership over there. And so I went over there as the associate chair, still thinking that was going to be my path. Next was going to be hopefully vice chair, until hospital leadership asked me to move upstairs to administration. And again, I had no degree. I didn't know anything about hospital administration. Why would I want that job? But then I realized it was everything we do in the emergency department, just a little bit, I think you said it on the lecture before, on the didactic before, just on steroids. So when people ask, what's your job like? I said, it's the same shit I did in the emergency department, just a little bit bigger. No, but it really was. And the skills you learn as an emergency physician really are invaluable to going into these other types of roles. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about that. But then from hospital administration, I was asked to join corporate administration, and that's how I ended up moving into our healthcare systems corporate administration, which I've loved. So it was my first job after residency, and I never looked back, and I never wanted to leave the system because I was, happy there. So that's kind of my path. A little bit chaotic.
Just curious, how many residents are in the room? Great. And are there any fellows in the room? Okay. So I want to, my story, I'm going to start it from residency, where I did recognize early that I wanted to be a hospital leader. I didn't really know what that looked like other than being Dr. Leon Haley at the time, if you all know who he is. He's was an extraordinary leader, was chief of service at Grady Memorial Hospital at Emory for a large part of his career before moving over to be the dean and CEO of Jacksonville in Florida, so before his unfortunate death. But what I will say is, because I had that person, I thought in 2002, he had done an administrative fellowship. There was probably like 2 programs in the whole country, but he did one of them. And at the time that I came out, there might have been 5, but they were all places where I didn't want to go. And I made the decision to stay in Atlanta, and I tell people that I did a bootleg fellowship in administration, which really consisted of working a full clinical schedule, and then when I wasn't working, I was basically shadowing Dr. Haley and being mentored and being put on committees and starting projects and failing, and he'd say, now what did you learn? So that was how I developed as a leader, or developed my interest in a leader. But what that did, because I stepped forward and it was put me on the very short list for the next job that was coming up. And even coming out of residency, I knew that there were some openings, so I didn't think it would take very long, but they filled almost before I started. So whoa, is me. But I persevered, and the next opening that came up, it was like Annabella, tap on the shoulder to say, this is the job that you're going to take. And so that was a great experience. And then developing in that role as assistant medical director, and then figuring out how to expand within that role to associate medical director, is when I learned, and maybe didn't even really recognize, all the aspects of quality improvement, quality performance, risk management, and being responsible for that in the emergency department, such that when the chief quality officer at our hospital moved to the Brigham, that position actually stayed open for a year because there really wasn't anyone in the pipeline. And so when they finally decided to start looking, I was tapped and asked to put my name in the hat, and I was, really, quality? I didn't even know I was doing quality. I was having a great time, but, And so I did, and it was a really great learning experience. It was a great learning experience to even learn how to interview for an executive level job, which is a whole nother discussion we could have. But what really helped me in that transition, not only the skills that I learned and got to benefit from staying in one place, which is also another discussion, as opposed to moving around, was building relationships such that the 10 or so panel interviews I had for that job, it's really kind of crazy, really worked in my favor because a lot of people in front of me already knew me and knew what I could bring to the table. And so I've enjoyed that role for the past 10 years and have expanded it, have had the opportunity to lead system level initiatives and projects. So I've really made it a point to expand and learn everything I can, such that I've been fortunate almost every 8 to 10 years moving to the next milestone and looking for what is my next. And so, we can talk a little bit about how to have your path move forward. I think Judd, everyone here has, it's not always straight. It's curvy. Sometimes you make several U-turns, but as long as you stay moving.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back to residency as well. So I did residency at Bellevue, NYU. I'm sorry for everybody who heard this beforehand. But it was a really wonderful place to work and to train. you know, and because it was, I ended up staying there for years after my residency. I stayed on as an attending. While I was there, you know, I didn't have any administrative role. You know, I did some research. I was in charge of the academic associates, and I thought really my pathway was to be a researcher, and all the, you know, I would do abstracts. I had some, you know, research mentors. I didn't really do that many papers. And I think, you know, it really took me a while to figure out that I wasn't a researcher. When that happened was actually my transition to Long Island Jewish Northwell. And, you know, I think towards the end of that, my time at NYU, I was ready for an administrative role. And at that point, there really wasn't any offers for that, even though I raised my hand, and we talked about being present and raising your hand for things. So the opportunity actually arose because one of my former co-residents, who's two years below me, Dr. Sal Pardo, was working in Northwell, and then at the time there were some transitions there, and he just called me up out of the blue, and he's not somebody that, you know, I talk to every day, and I was like, oh, you know, it's so nice to hear from you, and he's like, would you be interested in this role? And I'm like, oh, you know, it was kind of a surprise, and I was like, let me go check it out. And I'm one of those people who just has to really like look at a place a few times, a number of times before I feel comfortable. And there was a lot of great things about it. So, you know, that connection with my former co-resident, those connections are things that last a lifetime. And that was what got me the job as an associate chair at Long Island Jewish Medical Center. And then, you know, eventually I got promoted to vice chair, which is the role that I'm in now. I think, you know, one of the things in terms of that pathway is that, you know, my time at Bellevue was immense, and it was, you know, we were familial. It was very appreciated. I learned so much there, but for whatever reason at that time, those roles weren't available to me, even though I kind of felt like I was ready. And I think if you face that, then, you know, either maybe you don't have the sponsorship or the mentorship. And it's good to look at other places, you know, if you're ready for that, if nobody's looking at you that way. When I first started my career, also, because we were talking about advanced degrees, I got my MPA over 3 years part-time while I was working full-time at NYU. And that was like for the future growth with the knowledge that maybe someday I wanted to do administration. I think in retrospect, I would have done it differently because I didn't have any role or the experience, and I was getting this master's in public administration, but I wasn't applying it. So by the time I got into my role, I was like, well, I forgot everything, you know, from my master's. I do have those 3 letters after my name, but I think if I had done it differently, I would have waited a little bit to be able to apply it a little bit more. Or, you know, if somebody had sponsored me at that time to be able to apply it, I think that would have been really helpful. So that's one of the things I would have done differently.
And then, can you hear me without the mic? Yeah, we don't have to. Here, you could hold the steps. Yeah. Oh, is that a recording? Yes. Ooh, I better be careful what I was going to say. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Whew. Thank you. So. I do want to say there's a theme you heard among us. So first of all, we had prep calls for this, and then we said we don't really need prep calls, and then we ended up being on for an hour and a half because we just enjoyed talking to each other about solving problems, and we didn't prep and we just babbled, but it was fun. So I'm going to take the same spirit here. But one of the themes that you heard from each one of us, and we used different words to do it, but I think Nicole said be present, and everybody else in the world is telling you the wrong thing. They're telling you just say no. The translation to be present is say yes. And the theme you heard with every one of us is we didn't know what the heck we were going to do. See, I reused a different word. We didn't know what the heck we were going to do, but we were present, and someone gave us a chance. And they gave us a chance because each one of us was in our own little way a go-to person when someone had problems. Heck, Nicole's the chief quality officer. She didn't even know what that was when it was offered to her. At Jefferson, Trish Henwood, who's an ER doc in Ted's department, was named chief quality officer. She never did a day of quality. She's the executive vice president in charge of quality. She's like 40 years old because when COVID hit, she says, I got it. I'll take it and run with it. And people develop that. And everybody else who's telling you to say no, no one's coming back to you. They keep telling you they're coming back to you. They're not coming back to you. So I'm just going to be, straightforward. When I ask someone, I'm a senior vice president, I get to ask people to help. You say no to me once. If you have a really great excuse that I could understand and I know you're a workhorse, I'll come back to you. If I don't know you, done. I'm going to find somebody else to take that job, and that's who I'm going to offer the next job to. So do say no to things you're not interested in if you know what you want to do. But I never thought I'd be doing what I was doing. And yesterday, somebody reached out to me in the morning by email, don't know her, said, hey, I'd like to meet because I'm not going to give you too much background, or you may be able to figure out who this person is as you walk around, because we share some things. Turns out I had an hour free. I'm like, okay, let's go meet during this hour. I had the don't say no, just say yes conversation. Today at an interest group meeting, it turns out a whole bunch of interested people show up and there was no interest group leadership. Guess who walked out being the chair of the interest group? That person's going to rifle to the top. And I said, hey, how about so-and-so's the chair? And everybody makes fun of being voluntold. She says, you said just say yes, so let's go with it. But that's the way you move up. You do not move up by saying no. If you know you don't want to be in education, don't take the APD role. If you don't know what you want to do, take it, whatever it is.
Questions from the audience, right? This is about you guys as well, so don't be shy, especially I'm going to see a lot of residents, right, that raise their hands. Dr. Howie?
If you had to identify one skill set that you learned in your prior jobs that helped you to be where you are now, what was that one bullet point skill set?
No, I talk too much.
Well, I don't know. So I'll give you a couple if that's okay, just real quick. I hate losing. I never take the first no. And I am good with working really hard because I think if you are awesome and excellent, someone will recognize that if you're in the right place, and then you'll do great things or have the opportunity to do great things. So, I don't know. There it is. And I'll tell you another thing I tell my kids, but don't tell your kids this. Second place is the first place loser. You've probably heard that already, but anyway, bad parenting.
Thank you. I'm a firm believer of emotional intelligence as well, and hire for emotional intelligence. I'd rather have somebody on my team that has a high emotional intelligence than the smartest person around, because that person will know how to work with others. They can communicate. They don't get frazzled. They're always steady. So I think having amazing emotional intelligence skills would do all of us great justice. But I think also being authentic, being transparent, and being true to who you are. I know you said don't say no, but if you're going to say no, tell them why you said no, and explain the reasoning, and be gracious when you decline an offer. Because to your point, you want to be asked again. As Dr. Lal had said on a previous didactic, you don't want to become invisible, right? So when you don't accept something, do it graciously.
So if you haven't heard this, we can't let you leave here without hearing that emergency physicians make the best leaders. And there's a reason for that. We are extroverted, decisive, cool under pressure, and those are all already putting you ahead of the curve. What we learn to be better at is pausing and understanding that things take time, because we're very comfortable making decisions with little information and a very short timeline, right? But that's something you have to adjust. So that's just one thing that I will say. Another thing, personally, I think that helps me engage and collaborate with people and get people interested in coming back is that I do the work before the meeting. And I really try to set it up for a win. So set yourself up for a win. If you have a meeting, put it out there where you want it to get to the outcome that you want. If you want feedback, set it up so you get feedback in the best way you can get it. If you need a decision, set it up very clearly so everyone is ready to give you that decision. So you don't have a lot of, round and round discussion and thinking out loud. I mean, because that's the meetings people tap out, they're like, I'm never coming back. But if you have a reputation of, wow, we got 12 things done in this meeting, and then we got our early. Oh my goodness, right? So you want to be that person too, and then people they'll want to work with you. And when you tap them to work on things, they'll say, okay, because there's I need you to do this. Here's the goal line. Here's our time limit. I'm going to help you get there. And they're willing to be a part of a winning team. Back to Tony. You know, you're a coach. I'm a coach. I'm a collaborator. I'm a mediator. This is the quality person. I do everything. I mean, in terms of, and we do that well because we are ER physicians. We negotiate, we mediate. We do this every day. We don't even call it that, but that's what we're doing all day. So these are skills that you bring fundamentally to the table as an ER physician, which is why you are primed for leadership. You just have to say yes.
Thanks. Cheryl Heron, Emory University. I have a follow-up question to your comment about emotional intelligence, because we went to medical school and residency and did not do anything about HR and how to handle people, right? Until we sort of had to learn how to handle people. So my question really is, what are your thoughts, and anyone could answer this, on the many sort of personality profiles that you can do to understand different leadership styles and how to respond and grow? Because we're like, how do you find people before they get on your team who are emotionally inept, right? And then you're like, oh my God, I got to get rid of this person. So how do you figure out in this emotional intelligence space where we're not taught this anywhere, how to, get the right people on your team, figure out how your leadership style is going to help move where you want it to go so that everybody's in a win-win situation?
So I think one of the things is I try to interview them ahead of time and try to get as much information as I can. There are some people you can tell right from the first interview that this one's not going to work, right? So it's like out. So my current role right now is Senior Vice President of Medical Staff Affairs. So that's credentialing, privileging of all physicians. I deal with all physician issues, all the disruptive physicians that we have to terminate, suspend, et cetera. I'm involved in all those conversations. But on a personal level, I think I used to meet people sometimes, and they would just rub me the wrong way. Like you meet somebody like this person, oh, I can't work with that person. You just have these internal conflicts. Until I said, I have to stop, and I have to understand, why do they irritate me so much? What is it about that person that irritates me so much? And I said, and instead of walking away and not wanting to talk to him, I'm going to talk to him even more, because I'm going to really find out what makes him tick. And what is he like? And I realized that once I actually stopped the initial impression that I had of the person, and I just talked to him and said, so how many kids do you have? And I got to know him or her, whoever it was, as a person, and that there was more to that individual than the first initial facade. It made things a lot easier. So then I realized I just have to meet people. I'm going to go and meet and talk to anybody I can talk to, because I realized that once I knew somebody, first as an ER physician, it was so much easier to admit people when you called up, hey, Henry, I got an admission for you. All right, Annabelle, I'll take it. What do you got? And then they knew who I was, as opposed to somebody who never had met me before. And then, there used to be a guy that we used to admit to all the time, and he would answer the phone, because he would say, he'd go, yes, ER, what do you want? Like just really nasty. And I would say, I don't want to use his name, but I'll use a different name. Let's call him Jack for today. So I was like, oh, Jack, it's Annabelle. You really having a bad day today, huh? Oh, sorry. What do you have for me? But you got to know him as a personal level, and then you find ways to actually be able to get a lot done with that individual. And they're not as bad as you think they are. So really, I guess my point is, get to know people as much as you can. Network, socialize, get out of the ER, join committees, make yourself known as the person that they want you to, they want to send the patients to you to take care of them. Be the responsible, the accountable person, and then people keep coming back, and people will be nicer to you too. I think that's now obviously sometimes you have to get rid of a toxic person. Let's be honest. Like when Nancy and I started LIJ together. And sometimes you have to you have to get rid of one. This is recorded. But sometimes you have to get rid of one. But you know what? When you get rid of one bad one, all of the other ones, all of a sudden will do anything for you, because you have resolved an issue that's been lingering in the department for a long time that nobody else wanted to face. So I think, too, in order to not waste your time or their time, is, try to resolve it early. instead of lingering. I mean, I've talked to a lot of chairs, and like, I got to terminate this guy now. I said, so what have you been doing for, how long has he been like that? For years. I said, so what's in his file? Nothing. Yeah, so it's, you know, if you really know they're not salvageable, then you got to start setting the plan. Yeah.
I mean, but to follow up to the follow-up, I've actually started looking at personality profiles like this. I've started looking at personality profiles, this, Berkman, whichever the one, Strength Finders, whichever the one you want to look at, and have found that there's some strategies in dealing with your Ds, your Is, your S's, and your C's without getting yourself frustrated. And so concretely, it does help, I think, to have some knowledge or some background about some fundamental things, because everyone's different and you want to mitigate biases, right? Because of how, if I'm a high I or D, I don't want to let that override the very real positive things that my C's. So I'm an I and I love C's because I'm a big vision, but I need somebody who can operationalize and do things. And so I think it's very helpful as you're growing into leadership to consider these sorts of personality profiles for yourself and for the people you need to fill in the gaps to get the work done.
And just to add to that, right, because you can't have a meeting with all extroverted people, right? Because then that meeting, nothing, to your point, nothing's getting done at that meeting. And you need the diversification of personalities to really, one, to implement initiatives and be very thoughtful and innovative. Is you need all those different ideas. So different personalities really, the diversity is what really allows you to expand, I think.
I wanted to add two things, one to Marianne's question and one I misinterpreted your question, but I think the answer to my misinterpretation was useful. And one is like, know what you're bad at. I'm bad at hiring people. I have a hiring rate that my team won't let me hire people anymore. I'm honest. I hire people I like and I bond with and they seem great. When I'm hiring people I don't know, so I don't do that. What I have done is I've evolved to, I have a hiring group that I trust more than I trust me, and they trust themselves more than they trust me, and I retain veto power. And I don't even interview, but if it just seems like a misfit from looking at something, then I'll get involved. But otherwise, they can do the hiring. And some of these are reasonably high-level positions, and I trust them because they know what I'm looking for. Back to your question, my answer to the single best skill set we have, because they're right, ER docs are the best, and it's really great if you understand how to work with the individuals, it's we make decisions. And so a meeting with an agenda is great if a decision is made. I am never going to the same meeting twice. Like if we can't decide the first one, it's either not important enough to decide or flip a coin and move on. And like it's not hard to make decisions. And so you need to structure governance in each group. I run the telemedicine program and I run the Enterprise Digital Health Governing Council, where I'm not the person who has budgetary control, but we could kill things and say it's not moving forward to even be considered. But there is no meeting we're going to discuss a product that we don't have an answer to. It's not going to happen, and we're going to make a decision. And that's important. And Colin Powell has a quote, I don't remember it exactly, but it's like the 40-70 rule, and which was, if you don't have 40% of the information, your decision is going to be really bad. But if you wait for more than 70%, they're going to invade and kill you. And that's really the truth. So you have to get to the sweet spot, and that's the way we live every day in everything else. So in EDIC, it's a little bit of a group vote. In Jeff Connect Guiding Team, they're an advisory body to me. And as it was explained to me when I took the job or when I was in the job for a while and was having issues with marketing or legal or some other people since we're recorded, the person I reported into said to me, Judd, you're the decision maker. If marketing won't market it and you don't grow, they don't get fired, you get fired. I said, if legal tells you it's too high risk and you do it and it's high risk and there's a compliance issue, you get fired. But if you don't grow and you did something high risk and we don't get in trouble, you get promoted. So you need to own the decision. So, it reframed my meeting because I never ask my lawyers, can we do this? I'm like, what's the risk and how do we mitigate it? And, I'm not an idiot. If they say it's high risk and we can't mitigate it, we're probably not doing it. But there are some things that HR would recommend against that I'm just doing. Like I'm doing, the lawyers know I'm doing it, they wish I wasn't doing it. There's no real downstream consequences to it, besides people start work, 2 weeks earlier, and they don't have 2 non-productive weeks getting onboarded. And we're going to make the system change to accommodate what we do. And with 40,000 employees, think about how many millions of dollars will be saved by forcing that change through the system. So at the end of the day, the thing is, make a decision, live with it, accept the consequences, and it's really important. And I think, we've had a lot of conversations over the years. That's what all of us do. We'll screw up something sometimes. Don't screw up the big things. And I like to say, have a toggle switch. Know how to get out of it if it turns out it's bad. It's like every technology. Shut it off, reboot your computer, it works fine. You need a reboot switch on most of your ideas.
So I'm just going to, first of all, the DISC concept, 100% right. Two quick tips. One of my worst hires ever, had I talked to the nursing staff at the hospitals the physician worked at, would have saved me all kinds of headache. Doctors, rave review. Don't talk to doctors, okay? Just don't, because we're just too nice. And then my secret weapon for recruitment, and Dr. Jones knows this, my wife. And so if you can't take my wife to the recruitment dinner, find someone that you trust that has that just added sense around, is this person going to be the one that you want to work with for the next 5 to 10 years? So that, along with all of the other things, I 100% agree. And you're going to still make mistakes. So you're going to bring people on your team that are just not going to pan out. The hard part is, how do you move them on? Right.
So adding to that, there's great hiring data. We're talking about it like there's a science to it. All the hiring data shows a 50% failure rate no matter what you do. There's a thing out there, it's a proprietary program called Interview Architect. You can pick the 8 traits you want for your applicant. It gives you 10 questions you could ask them for each of those traits. They're open-ended questions, they're great. Still a 50% failure rate. You're not going to get that part right, which is why when you look in politics, and this is important, whether you like Obama or like Trump, and you probably don't like both of them, right? I get that. When you look at who they put on their staff, it's people they knew from their past lives, right? It's people they trusted. It's people they knew their work ethic. It's people they knew how to manage and relate to in terms of DISC scores or just personality without anything fancy. So my team is, Ted was great when I got recruited. My chair's over there. I came with a whole bunch of people from Penn. When do you get to go in a job where you could take your 7 best friends who know what's going on, people you've worked with forever? And then the people we added were people they knew that they had worked with for years. And it's a really good team that works well together, because we haven't talked about being 100% honest and having people under you who could say, bad idea, don't do that. Or how often we look at people above us and say, bad idea, don't do that. And I know we all do that. And I know we all hire people we trust who will tell us. I get phone calls often saying, dude, that was like really bad. Don't send that email. Take that back. Yeah, that's important things to get that advice from people. Work with people you trust who will, whip your butt when your butt needs to be whipped.
You have a question? And before you ask the question, one of the things for the residents, we focus on emotional intelligence a lot. You've heard that a lot, and that's like a very key concept. And it goes along with self-awareness as to your ability to interact and communicate with others. And I think those are the key things that people look at when we hire people, and also the key concepts that we look at when we think somebody that will make somebody successful in the future as a leader.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ali. I'm a second-year ED resident here at LSU New Orleans. One of the things that I was wondering about, as someone who wants to go into the community, if I want to get an administrative role, a lot of you had networking and spent a couple of years not doing that, then eventually get into those roles down the road. And Dr. Kwan, you kind of touched on this, that you did the MPA way before you actually got into the role yourself. Is it worth it for me to pursue an administrative fellowship or get an MBA or something right out of residency to be able to get these roles? Or is it worth it just to do the networking like you guys did and just do it through that?
My favorite question. And the answer is, it depends. Okay. As someone who actually just am transitioning out of 10 years of chairing or directing an emergency medicine administrative fellowship, I will just say it depends. So we've had fellows that had already had masters of whatever flavor you like, and that's really okay. The return on investment of them coming to do a fellowship is that they were actually put in a position to walk the walk. And so the mission for them was, okay, you just did residency, but you did this degree at some point, whenever. What can you do in developing your leadership administrative skill set? And you need to leave here with deliverables, things you can speak to, experiences, and exposures, right? So that's one opportunity. If you don't have a master's and you still want to, if you do a fellowship, there's a number of fellowships, and the hook for a lot of them is, especially for the residents, is, oh, I can get an MBA or an MPH or something, and maybe I don't even have to pay for it, but you really are paying for it. It's a little bit of a smokescreen, but it's okay if you want to go and do that. But understand that if your fellowship is all about getting the master's, that's not really a fellowship, right? You can go to school anytime. You can work full-time, make way more money, and get a master's. Why do fellowship? If you're going to do a fellowship, you are there for an intense experience, an immersion experience, to learn and be exposed to as much as you need to be exposed to. What you have to understand is, even as you're learning theory when you do that, your next job is not because you got the MBA. It's probably going to be because you did the fellowship, because you have the experience, okay? Now, if you did, if you don't have any of that, and you're not sure, you really need to take a job, but you're still interested, I go back to a comment, or maybe I made it in the previous didactic. Get involved, show that you can sign up, you can do things, and you will get fast track. People want people who can execute, who are willing to learn, who are willing to show up. You don't need a master's degree to do that. Now, so that's the first part of that. It depends. The second part is, in my case, I did all that, and I don't have a master's, and I'm at an executive level position. But I'm also in the same healthcare system. So I've been able to move forward because my experience, connections, and things have spoken for me, right? And so I didn't need extra letters to move forward. Now, if I leave my health system, that might be favorable or unfavorable, right? Because what they'll say on the job description is they want a minimum of X years of experience, which I generally have at this point, and they may want a master's level trained. Does that mean I don't apply for the job? Not really, because you can have someone as a master's and 10 years of experience and did 3 things, but I can speak to a huge portfolio of things that I did. Who would you hire? So it really just depends. But sometimes moving from different places, the masters might speak a entry-level language for people who don't know you. So that's what I'll say to that. I think there might be some differing opinions about that, but that's how I answer that question. I don't know if anybody else wants to take that.
No, I agree with you. I think it depends, right? I'm the same. I think it also depends on, like Nancy said, she took her NPA early on, and then she forgot a lot of it. A lot of times we put people in positions at our organization, if they become like a chair or a regional director, et cetera, and then we ask them to go back and do their master's at that point, because there's value, as Tony said, he's starting the managing healthcare delivery. There's value at that point, because then you can really use what you learn and you find value in it. So I think you're right. I think it does depend. But I don't know, Tony, if you want to.
I'll just give a quick bottom line from my standpoint. If you seek the degree early, it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to guarantee you anything. And you don't necessarily have to have that added degree to be successful or grow in an organization, as evidenced by the panel. So I would say, if you want to do it for the right reasons, because you want to do it as part of your professional development, and that you're going to use that, the time, energy, and skills and the knowledge that you obtain from it to do something great in your career.
I'm going to agree with everybody, and I'm going to reword my get skills, not letters comment to get skills and experience, not letters comment. And I think that is, we have an administrative fellowship for administrators, or people that want to be administrators, not physicians. I think it's one person a year, about 100 applications. 100% of them, I think, are vice presidents in our enterprise within 5 or 6 years of finishing that. Now, that's not paying physician salary. So part two is decide who you want to be when you grow up, because some of these opportunities may not come paying you what they pay an emergency physician in the early years, just like a fellowship doesn't in anything else. And so, again, skills, experience, not letters, I think is, we all agree.
So the only thing I'm going to caution that with is, being in the same generation with Judd, is that I'm pretty sure at that point we had choices of EMS and tox. That was it. Those were the only two choices. And so with the younger group coming out, there is some value to the fellowships, if only because we didn't have those choices. And so now it's not expected to be on our resumes, but it might be expected to be on theirs.
I think that's important, though, to your point of what you said, because there are, to your point, if you're looking at multiple applications, especially outside of your system, they may look at two people that have very identical CVs, but one took the MBA and one didn't, and so they might be more better chance of that person getting an interview. So I do think as we're seeing lots and lots more doctors getting masters now than we did maybe when we did it. So I think it goes back to, it depends. But, when I graduated from residency, we would apply for a job and we'd be program director of a residency program, not even APD. It was like, you're the program director with no experience, right? Because there weren't program directors. So I think, again, times do change, and you got to take that into consideration and when you make those decisions.
The quick question I had was kind of a follow-up on the idea of skills. So a lot of training programs, advanced training programs, kind of have a finance component, operations component, a QI component. Are there specific skill sets as you've kind of gone along in your career, which you said, I really wish I would have learned more about finance at an earlier stage, or I really wish I would have learned more about administrative leadership at an earlier stage? Because a lot of times there's certificates you can get in a certain thing if you're not going to pursue the full degree. So any particular kind of tangible things that you wish you've gotten more exposure to earlier in your training period?
So I'll be brief. Implementation science, quality improvement, process improvement, project management. I know squat about that. Now my whole life seems to be centered around that most of the time. And for the quality folks, that they eat and breathe that stuff. We're not, when I was a resident, it wasn't a thing. So I wasn't trained in it at all. Change management.
Yeah, human resources for me specifically, just all those things we talked a little bit about earlier, that is a whole thing. We don't learn anything about that. And we're managing people. You think you're managing your intern and doing the right thing. You're probably doing all the wrong things. The way you talk to them, how you treat them. It's just, so there's that. But one little small thing I wanted to just mention that, you can learn these things without officially getting certificates and letters. I mean, if you want to learn about finance, the best way sometimes to learn about finance is to be in charge of like a bunch of money, right? And you already are. It's called your own salary, right? So learn how to do that well. And then, if you are not given a cost center or some job where you have that responsibility, guess what? Be like, room mom. You get a budget because everybody pays a fee. Figure that out, right? And then excel at that. Go back to your college and be the fundraising chair. Guess what? You're managing a budget. That's what we just don't do as emergency physicians, but you can do it. You don't have to have this like expertise in finance. You have to know how to do it. And all I'm saying is that you can learn how to do those things and attain some of these skills outside of your job. And guess what? When the interview comes, it all resonates the same because you can speak to what you did. You can talk about the outcomes. And that's what they want to hear. What did you learn? What did you fail at? What did you recover? That's the questions. And so they want someone who's going to bounce back, who's going to show they can do things. And so if you can articulate that, that's who's getting hired.
At the end of the day, you need to solve problems. So we start, actually we've learned to start meetings by framing stuff. And there's a slide at the beginning that is the guiding principles for the meeting, because it refocuses people on what are we trying to do. And then we ask, what problem are we trying to solve? And do we already have a way in the system that we could solve it? Or do we need to invent a new way to deal with it? And so your question's complicated because it depends in the area you are. I manage a pretty large budget. It's larger than emergency medicine. I have a whole bunch of people. It's 100+ people who work in my urgent care centers. The nurses are mine. The docs are mine. Like, I got to manage all of that. So it's significant HR and a ton of finance. And so you can't have everybody leave. You can't give everybody a bonus. And so I actually find, I'll tell you, like, the thing I lose sleep on at night is the balance between budget and pissing people off. And we've had this discussion, is that, and I asked the question, and I don't want anybody to answer it out loud, but there will come a day, or it will be every day, that you have to make a decision. Are you going to be nice, or are you going to be effective? Clearly, when you could be both, be both. But, you know, it turns out that when you're not in management, management looks like a bunch of overpaid people walking around in suits, right? It does. It's really hard. Every decision I make pisses off somebody. It affects their time and money. I can't make a decision that makes more money for the enterprise and gives everybody a raise, right? That just doesn't happen. But I need to give people enough time and money to keep them engaged. So it's wrestling with stuff internally. And almost, I mean, somebody said yesterday, the best thing you could do is go to counseling and figure out how to get over this. And I missed during COVID time. I used to drive home and debrief with people who are close to me in my inner circle and talk about the difficult challenges I had the day. So I think the skill set you need most is to be introspective, realize that you're going to do things that are hard to do. They're not going to make everybody happy. And I don't want to say go buy a Peloton or go play tennis, which are two things I do, but you need to figure out how can you debrief to relieve that stress before you get home and scream at your kids or your spouse.
I saw somebody out there have a question. No. I think we're at the end of time. And we'll be around for a little bit if you guys have any questions. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you to the panel.